Hello, my name is Rob Jordan, and today I'm going to be doing a comparison review of the two Swiss replacement rubber bracelets for Rolex and other timepieces. And the two bands I'm going to be looking at today are Rubber Bee versus Everest. So you can see here over on the left hand side I have a copy of Rubber Bee band, and over on the right hand side I have an Everest band, and both of these are rubber bands for and made for the Rolex Daytona. My Rolex Daytona is here in the middle with a steel band, and you can see that it has a dark black bezel and dial, inner dials as well, and some black writing inside. So you can definitely see the reason that I decided to go with a black band is to have that follow through, the black on black look, and transfer that beautiful black coloring, very masculine look on the band through the watch itself. And a couple other reasons I went with rubber and actually went and decided to go with a Rolex Daytona steel was because I really wanted to get this kind of a rubber band that would allow me to do all of the active things that I like to do here in South Florida. One of those things is swimming, biking. I do a lot of tennis and golf, and those types of activities. And the feel of rubber against the skin is certainly a lot better than the steel that I've been used to with some of my other Rolex bands themselves. So just a great comfort fit, and so that's really the reason that I wanted this. But I can also tell you that I also prefer the tang buckles over the clasp that comes from Rolex. Although there's some benefits of having the clasp, I just happen to like the ease of adjustment and the strength of fit, just the comfort of having a tang buckle than having the standard clasp that comes from Rolex itself. So let's get started here. I want to show you the packaging between the two bands, and here you can see it comes from Rubber Bee. The packaging here, it's coming from UPS, and they have a rubbery envelope that's delivered in. Very nice. Very. I mean, I actually decided to keep that, long term, because I just happen to love the packaging itself. It just makes it look very elegant, and it also contains the cards, the warranty, the instruction and maintenance information, and it comes with a little plastic casing that, if you want to take the band off, and in this case what I did is I took my steel band and I stuck it inside that casing and then stuck that back into the rubber case. So very, very neat. It says it's made in Switzerland, and we'll take a look at that in a second. But let's look at the Everest delivery information, and you can see that it also comes with some packaging, but in their case it's not rubberized. It looks a little bit more like a cardboard feel to it, and the casing itself that it comes in is another little plastic pouch, right? And the informational guides are kind of in a card format and can be slipped into this little brown manila type mini envelope piece. So I can tell you that the delivery was from United States Postal Service, as opposed to the UPS, which is what the Rubber Bee comes from. So not really a big difference here, within the packaging, but you can see there's a little bit higher quality of the packaging, on the Rubber Bee side. Just seems a little bit more elegant, a little bit more high quality there. But that's obviously a small factor here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the two bands side by side. And again, you can see that there's a big difference here in terms of lettering, or and in his case, you see rubber B. It has some markings underneath, which kind of translate to a natural organic isoprene. So it's a kind of an organic rubber. It's identifying what type of rubber it is, as opposed to on the Everest side it says genuine rubber, but it doesn't tell you that it was vulcanized or any kind of rubber itself. Doesn't say organic or anything like that. It just says genuine rubber. So it's very kind of sparse on the Everest side. On the rubber B side, it has a lot of different markings. It says Swiss made, so you know that this was made in Switzerland, right? It also has some markings at the top here, M106 CD, which I'm not exactly sure what the indication is, but it probably means that it's a very specific type of production run, maybe for quality service, or maybe indicating that this is a specifically designed watch for the Rolex Daytona, and they don't want to get that mixed up with any other brand or any other design that they have. And they have many designs for many different watches, including many of the Rolex watches, which is what I cover here. But certainly there's no markings of similar style there over on the Everest band. Right? All right, so let's get started. We're going to start talking about rubber B, and I can tell you that I really like the feel of the rubber B band. It's not sticky. It is very high quality. It has a really nice dark black matte finish. Right, I tried to scratch it, and it certainly does not scar. It doesn't scratch. It has a very strength feel and a very elegant look to it. And on the strength side, it's flexible, but robust. Right. I mean, it has a very strong feel to it, but it's very flexible too. Right. So it fits my wrist perfectly. And it is malleable, right? So as I need to move it around, it moves, but it's not so flimsy, I would say, than maybe some other types of plastics that you may be familiar with. This, of course, is a vulcanized rubber, which is a very strategic, very unique manufacturing process, which gives rubber a very strong or nice strength to it, right? Which is very similar to a steel watch, right? Not quite as strong as steel, obviously, but very close to that. While it also gives you the kind of wear and tear that you're accustomed to with a fine timepiece such as Rolex. So here I wanted to show you the strength of this this band. If you can see over on the left hand side, this picture is beautifully emblematic of the kind of strength that the rubber B vulcanized rubber has. If I left this in this position, notice how the timepiece is off the table, right? It's not laying flat against the table. There's no flimsiness. It's a very tight construction, and it's holding the watch upright, right? So if I left it there for 100 years, it'd probably be in that same position, right? Yet it is so flexible and made to be wrapped around the wrist that over on the right hand side you can see that it creates a perfect circle for your wrist size and wrist circumference. So just a beautiful design for a bracelet for your watch. Now, the other piece of this I really wanted to show you is two things. One, the connectivity of this watch band to the case itself. It has a tight integration. Look at the tight integration between this band and this watch. It is not a NATO band, right, which goes underneath the watch itself, right? There's no pinch of skin, like you don't see any skin under this band because it is a tight integration between the band itself and the watch itself. So that's what you're getting with this kind of construction, right? I mean, it has this curved top, right? You can see how it's curved, but it's designed specifically to work with the Daytona, made exactly for the Daytona, fits it perfectly. And then over on the right hand side, you can see that it also tapers down, right? You can't see it too well from the picture at the top here, but you can see a little bit of a taper between, on the actual Rolex itself. See how it kind of tapers off and gets a little bit thinner as it goes closer to the Tang buckle, right? And you can see that a little bit better on the rubber bee and to some extent on the Everest band itself. You know how it kind of tapers, very similar to the way the Rolex band has over there. And that's exactly how the rubber bee strap is designed, very similar fashion to what Rolex has come out with. Now let's talk about the buckle. The buckle is an 18 millimeter Tang buckle, right? It's made extremely strong. It has brushed steel and it has no grooves whatsoever on the sides, and so it just has a very, very nice look to it. And you can also see the loops over here on the left picture. It's a kind of a close-up. You can see the protective loops, or the first loop here, which has protections on the sides that keep it locked into place, whereas the second loop can be adjusted further back so that when you have the leftover wraparound from the closure, you can adjust this loop to go a little bit further back or a little bit closer in as you need it. Whereas this loop, because it's kind of locked into place, it does not have to move. So just a really well constructed buckle system. Now this is a great picture because you can see one of the reasons I love this band is just because of the look. You see the black on black, you see the bezel, you see the inner black circles within the dials, right, and the black band, and how it just kind of transfers that color scheme all the way through the timepiece itself. It has a very light to wear feel, so I mean, it's extremely light, and it feels just, it's I mean, I wore this band for over a week and did not have to take it off. It felt light. It did not sweat. Even in the sun, it was. I didn't feel any heat transfer from from the sun through the material itself, and it just felt perfect, especially when I would connect the Tang buckle to the in the little grooves. The wraparound was perfect, and it just felt like it was designed for my wrist size. I have about a 6.75 inch wrist, and it was just a very perfect fit for my wrist. So I just happened to love the the design here just seemed to fit. It seems like it was actually made specifically for the Daytona, and with ultra care. I mean, there was nothing left undone here. Just a very nice fit. Here's another side picture of the rubber B band, and you can see the strength of this vulcanized rubber. All right, so let's talk about the Everest band. Okay, right out of the box, I can tell that the rubber was a little bit lighter than the rubber B. It flops a bit more. You can see, it certainly does have the integration that the rubber B has, but it's definitely a lighter band and a little bit less. You can feel that it has a little less strength in terms of the way it's designed. But the big kind of difference, and I would say this is probably the biggest difference between the two bands of so far in this comparison, was basically the color. Right, the rubber B band has kind of a dark black matte look to it, and the Everest band has more of a glossy and a lighter black look. So that's just kind of right out of the box. You can kind of see the difference based on color. But there's also one other big difference, and actually two other big differences. One, you can see that the Everest band is quite a bit longer than the rubber B band. And it just kind of seems that the Everest band was made for bigger wrist size than mine. You can also see that the two connection or loops are much fatter, much bigger, and they tend to wobble a little bit more than the one that the rubber B comes with. So you can see the top Everest and the bottom rubber B. You can see the difference in color. The Everest actually in this light looks a little bit blue, rather than black. However, that's just the lighting. It's black. It's just the lighting kind of reflects out a kind of different blue tinge to it. Right. At the bottom picture, you can see another kind of different feature. There is that it has a smaller bar that comes with the Everest band, and that bar, using that bar kind of makes the Everest wiggle just a slight bit more when you're connecting it to the case of the Rolex Daytona. I was a little bit nervous when I had that wiggle there, because it kind of felt, is it secure? Is it really connected to the band or to the watch itself? So, however, after kind of playing around with it for a good half hour, I felt that it was strong enough. So I did end up wearing the Everest for about a week, and I just even though it did wiggle a bit more, it wasn't terribly noticeable after I first got it on. Alright, so here's a side view of the Everest band. You can see how it tapers just slightly, a little bit less than the rubber B, but it does have a nice little look and design to it. It also has a very nice vulcanized feel to it. It does have some strength to hold the watch upright. It does have a circular feel once you connect it to your wrist, right? So it's very similar to the rubber B in those respects. Now we're going to compare the buckles right? And here's one of the big differences, I guess, between the Everest buckle and the rubber bee buckle is you can see the kind of oversized loops over on the Everest side, right, as opposed to kind of the diminutive loops on the rubber bee side. But also, there's a screw visible on the Everest buckle, right? And this is not visible on the rubber bee buckle, right? So you don't have an available screw there. So this is not obviously a terrible, you know, eyesore, but it's certainly a difference. And the other thing that the Everest buckle actually came with a scratch, not that it was really noticeable to anybody other than me during this review, but the Everest buckle did come with a small scratch. You can see it in the kind of the bottom left picture, and of course the rubber bee had no obvious scratches there on any aspects of it, but those were just kind of some small comparisons. The Everest, because of the kind of the size of it, right? It has to kind of wrap around the wrist a bit more. So I kind of felt that it was a bit long, or longer, I should say. And if my wrist was maybe longer or larger, it might have fit better for me. But you know, certainly for my size wrist, it had a it tended to wrap around long or more than the rubber bee band. And so what I had to do here is, of course, move the little loops around further on the Everest side in order to compensate for the length of this watch band, right? The other big difference you can see on the band between this band and the rubber bee band is that there's quite a few number of holes on this Everest band, right? Now, I don't know what's preferable to most consumers, but certainly if you find that you want to have a lot of holes, you know, for adjustability purposes, the Everest band certainly has a lot more. On the rubber bee band, let's go take a look at this. You can see it's much fewer holes. Now, you know, from my perspective, I actually enjoy having less holes there because I think it has a better, more defined, more exquisite look, I would say, than having a lot of little holes there. Kind of reminds me of a baseball cap with you know, all those little holes for adjusting versus a custom fit hat baseball cap, right? So I mean, I of course love the baseball caps that are custom fit, right? But you know, it depends on what you're. I mean, if you like the additional adjustment, right? You can. The Everest band has you know, certainly more holes to adjust into. There's a side view of the Everest band. All right, so here's side by side the two bands with the various holes. Now again, one of the things that I really liked about the fit of the rubber bee on my wrist is that if you notice how the tang buckle is sort of more in the middle of my wrist, as opposed to the Everest band, where the tang buckle kind of wraps around to the left hand side. Now it doesn't dig into my wrist, so you know, in terms of comfort, it certainly has comfort. However, the band, the rest of the band, tends to wrap around more of my wrist than the rubber bee band. The rubber bee seems to be built more for my style wrist size than the Everest band. Now, if I, you know, had a much larger wrist, then you know, I think I would prefer having a band that was bigger, potentially having more of those holes. But from my perspective, the rubber B band has a better fit for my wrist size, and certainly a better look when it comes to the less holes there for adjustment. All right. All right, so then let's compare side by side. And here's rubber B on the left, the Everest on the right. Again, very similar in many respects. These two, essentially juggernauts of the rubber band industry here. Definitely high quality bands. I mean, certainly a lot better than just some standard $15 or $10 band that you can find somewhere. But certainly definitely something that you'd want to invest in for a fine timepiece like a Rolex Daytona, which certainly not a small investment. Alright, so here I did a kind of a comparison between a couple other watch bands that I have. Here's a Tissot, right versus the Everest band. Right, you can see kind of the comparison. The Tissot has a little bit of a shiny gloss look to it. The Everest has a very similar type of glossy look. Here's the rubber B band. It compares very nicely, actually, against the AP RO offshore band. Look at that. Look at that comparison. Those two bands, they almost look like they're made in the same factory. I mean, they both have a very similar matte finish, right? A very thick, vulcanized rubber look. The contour lines on either side. Very, very nice. Here I put the Everest, I put the AP band in the middle, the rubber B band at the bottom. And it's very interesting. I mean, the looks here, you can see the size of the Everest, the length of it, just very, very long. AP is actually smaller. You look at the band, much shorter than either Everest and rubber B. So just very interesting how such a high performance band or timepiece company like AP will come out with a band that's much shorter, and certainly the number of holes on these bands, and you can see that the AP actually has one less band hole than the rubber B. Everest, let's see, has 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. So it's like 3 or 4 holes more than the AP. So I guess in terms of comparison, they're very similar. The rubber B and AP are actually closer together in terms of number of holes than the Everest size. Actually, you can even see that the size of the Everest holes are just enormous compared to AP. I mean, look at these; are just very small little circles. The Everest holes are just very large. All right, so there's the bottom side here, and earlier on we took a look at the compared the rubber B versus the Everest, but here's right up against the AP band. All right, so in this last slide here, we can certainly see the biggest difference between the bands is really the coloring. You can see how the matte finish on the AP band, the rubber B band, really kind of brings the light in, retains that black coloring, whereas the Everest band has a kind of very shiny, and almost gives off that blue glossy look, right? So depending on the lighting and what's reflecting up against it, certainly the AP and the rubber V bands are going to retain their dark black look, whereas the Everest, may have some tinges of other colors out there, including potentially blue or some other colors other than its intended, which would be the black. Come visit us at robsrolexchronicle.blogspot.com.